Hello and welcome to our latest edition of Seconds Count. This is the podcast from the Northern Ireland Ambulance Service, which brings you behind the scenes and gets you to talk to some of the people who help deliver our service on a daily basis. Today, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Heather Sharpe. Heather is our Assistant Director for EPRR, and she will explain to you what EPRR is. Heather, welcome.
It's easier to spell than it is to say. Emergency Preparedness, Resilience and Response.
Okay, and that is at Assistant Director level. I've known you a long time, Heather. You didn't start off as the Assistant Director of Emergency Preparedness.
EPRR.
Yeah, EPRR. Yeah. So you didn't start off as that.
No.
Could you tell us a wee bit? We ask everybody who comes in that's worked in the service about this. What brought you to the ambulance service? What did you do before it? Had you a life before it? And we're going to touch on some of your career highlights as well. But tell us a wee bit, how did you join the service?
I did have a life before NIAS. Not much. I had left school at 18, joined Queen's University to begin a degree in marine biology. So counting penguins in Antarctica, I thought maybe. But the job came up in the paper for the Eastern Ambulance Service Trust. It was something that I thought would be quite interesting. I'd always had a bit of an interest in first aid. So I applied and was
the Eastern Ambulance Service Trust. Yeah. Before NIAS was established. I wouldn't have thought you were that old because NIAS was established in 1995.
Yeah, it was 1994.
1994.
So I just left school the year before, and so whenever I got in to start my training as an EMT, I was 19. So,
but how was you said you had an interest in ambulance work beforehand? How deep did that go? What triggered that?
Well, when I was much younger, about 14, I mean, I was just one of those people that watched, I think Casualty had just come on TV. And
so you were a brain surgeon?
Yeah, brain surgeon. Somehow he didn't grasp me or grab me as much as the ambulance work that I could see there. So I actually, at the age of 14, wrote to the divisional officer at the time, was a gentleman called Harry Wan. And Harry Wan arranged for me to get picked up from school in one of the marked cars and shown round Broadway Ambulance Station. And that might not seem as if it would really grab your attention now, but back then I just thought this is fantastic. Potentially this is the career for me. So
at the age of 14, did you sit and think, yeah, the ambulance service, I want to work towards that?
I did, but I never thought that I would have the opportunity to apply at the age of 19. At the time, it was 21.
Yeah.
So my plan was to do my degree and see where life.
So in America, you became what's known as a high school dropout.
I was yeah.
Okay, so when
don't jest about that, but yeah.
When you came into the service, what sort of what was the interview process? What was it like?
You're testing my memory now.
Oh no, but in terms of the advert, what were they actually looking for? Because most people at that stage, Heather, to be perfectly honest with you, came into the service as ACAs, ambulance care attendants, and worked in PCS. But you didn't. You took a different route.
Yeah, this was direct entry into A&E as an EMT. So they were looking for.
Was that common?
I think it was the first time. I think it was the first time that they had recruited in that way, and that was why the age had dropped. So I think it was GCSEs. I'm not entirely sure if they asked for A levels.
Yeah.
But that got me onto an EMT program.
And how long did that EMT program last?
I think, what did they talk about?
It was your initial 6 week course.
6 week course and 2 weeks driving.
Yeah.
And then out you went into the world.
Well, it wasn't very long after that I joined the service, and the 6 week course became the 10 week course, but it still was called the 6 week course.
6 week course and the beaches.
And the beaches, yeah. And the likes of Harry Wan about there as well, So in 1995, all the board ambulance services merged and became the Northern Ireland Ambulance Service. Can you remember what that felt like at the time? Was that exciting or?
It was kind of the great unknown, because the ambulance services in the different trusts, certainly the Eastern Ambulance Service, we had a totally different uniform. We were in green way back then in 1994, when other services were very much blue shirt and tie. Even was the uniform with quite formal trousers and.
Well, I've even seen the pig caps. The big caps.
Yeah. So I think nobody really knew what way that change was going to be realised. And I don't think that change happened overnight. I think we're only really seeing the true collaboration of all the boards into one sort of ambulance service that works collaboratively over the last 10 years, maybe.
Yeah. So after your training, it was residential training, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
How did you find out being away from home as a 19-year-old?
I thought it was great crack. I was 19, away from home, learning a whole load of different things. Everybody in my course was a little bit older than me. And it was a good experience. It was very different for me, having just come out of university. The education style was very different to what I'd been used to in school and what I'd experienced in the university. But it was good. I think most people look back at those 6 weeks with an element of fondness.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there were pressurized courses. You know, you went home at the weekend, just absolutely spent.
Yeah, broken.
Yeah, you were. Well, they put you back together again by the Monday. But you know, you said that most of the people in the course were older than you, and this was a direct entry course. Previous to that, as I say, people would have moved through from ACA, so they would have all been much older. But at the same time, around that period, there wouldn't have been very many females on the courses, or was there in your case because it was a direct entry?
So I think our course was one of the first courses that really broke that mould of being overly male dominated. We had quite a few nurses, both male and female nurses actually, that had applied for the direct entry. I think it appealed to a lot of people. Now, people will correct me, but I believe there was 20 people in our course and maybe 9 or 10 of them were female. So it was a massive change.
Well, that really is, you know, because a year later said that in my course, I think we had 2 people on. But having said that, I looked at a course there about a year ago. I walked into one of the training sessions, and on a course of 16, 13 were female.
It's really flipped.
It's a huge change.
The dynamic has flipped.
Huge change, you know. So after the training course then, what happened? Where did you end up?
So my first station that I was sent to was Ardoyne. And even just before you're getting deployed and you're trying to get your uniform, because we trained in boiler suits, they gave us green boiler suits at the time. Just even getting the uniform to fit, they weren't used to getting uniforms for females, so that was quite interesting. I had to buy my own trousers out of Dunn stores, and they couldn't at the time. It wasn't long after the Shankill bomb, and everybody needed steel toe cap Wellington boots, and they couldn't get me a pair in size 5. And when I asked stores where my welly boots were, they said that the only welly boots that they could get in my size had Snoopy on the side.
Right, suited you down to the ground.
Thanks.
No problem. Right, so you went into Ardoyne,
and
you alluded to the Shankill bomb in there. Ardoyne, still in mid-90s, there'd been a lot of activity going on there in terms of trouble-related incidents. How did you, as a 19-year-old, you know, because it might be an age thing, but I look now at 19-year-olds and think they're only kids. But how did you deal with some of the stuff you would have seen around Ardoyne? Because Ardoyne had the whole gambit of responses, didn't it? You know, it had RTCs, it had cardiac arrest, but it had suicides in those days, even the bombings, etc. So, as a 19-year-old, how did you deal with that?
I think when you're 19, you think, pardon the pun, you think you're bulletproof. You know, you think you can deal with everything. It's probably only now, looking back, that you realise the impact that seeing those sorts of things can have on people. And I had gone to school just a couple of miles down the road, and I don't think I had appreciated just how naive I was as to the true ways of the world. And it was very tough, and you're right, in those days, John. The ceasefire hadn't long happened, but that moved us into a new era of punishment beatings, and that was very difficult and challenging. But I have to say, I was young in that environment, and the people that I met in that station, I think, are the reason why, as an older person, I'm not more damaged by it, because there was a real sense of camaraderie.
Well, that's a very interesting point now you make, because we spoke with Sean McCluskey about this at length and everything else. But you came out of a course where almost 50% were females. when you all came out of that course, I'm sure all 9 of you didn't end up in Ardoyne.
No.
What was the gender divide in Ardoyne when you did?
So I think there was me and there was one other girl who had been on my course. So there's 2 of us in the station. The station at the time ran 3 vehicles, more or less 24/7. So I wouldn't have seen another female or worked with another female for quite a few number of years.
And so how'd you find the ambulance service back in those days in terms of how females were treated within the service?
There was a sense, certainly, especially with a course like mine, that really did sort of flip the norm in terms of the number of females coming in, where the guys that were in the job, I think, had a real genuine worry that women weren't going to be able to cut it. That either emotionally they were going to find it too challenging, or the other big thing that you always had to prove was whether or not you could lift. So the stretchers, if you remember, were, it depends on who you ask, they keep on getting heavier and heavier, but 6.5, 7 stone maybe. And you put your average adult on that of 10, 12 stone.
Sure.
And we were lifting them into the back of the ambulance, if you remember, and pushing them in. And you nearly needed to prove yourself at the first really tough call that you went to. And the first heavy person that you lifted. And if you passed those 2 tests, then you almost had a rite of passage to be accepted. But it wasn't easy.
And then when you were accepted, you again said that it was down to the people in the station that got you through all those tough times, so proving that acceptance, once you get in there, it's good to hear that the staff did continue to look out for each other, including these new, because I can imagine what people felt about direct entry stuff. There's always this rite of passage, which normally started at ACA, as I say. You had to go through the PCS, but to learn how to speak with patients, etc. So it's good to hear that, and I'm sure your experience was shared by the other females who were on the courses there, that they were out and they got accepted into the stations and it became an integral part of the response that we had. How long were you in Ardoyne for?
At that time, when you were an EMT, you did like a year's probation, during which you did quarterly assessments. And at the time, they didn't want us to be too urban or rural focused, so they swapped us after 6 months. So after 6 months, I then went to Lisburn Station, and it was a little bit different at that time.
In what way?
There was a gentleman there, and I was coming from an environment where I had been naive and very looked after, and he just couldn't get his head round females being in the ambulance service at all, to the point where we shared the driving day about. So that was it opened his mind that women could drive, but he wouldn't be seen in the front seat with me. So if I was driving, he sat in the back, so that if we happened to be driving around the town or on the way to a call, nobody would actually see him in an ambulance with a girl, a female.
Well, that's powerful to hear that, but thankfully things have moved on so much since then, and along
now nobody will get in when I'm driving.
I can understand. How long did you have to run with that member staff, or were you in Lisburn for just the 6 months to the end of your probation year? Yeah,
well, I was on relief, so you didn't really get put on with anybody for any protracted period of time.
Okay, and after your probation was up, what station you assigned to?
I actually went to Templemore Avenue, which isn't there anymore. I think it turned into a swimming pool.
Well, it was always a swimming pool. And the station was beside it.
So it was the precursor to the new Bridge End.
The bridge,
so I was there for about 6 months. And got accepted onto my paramedic course.
So you've Ardoyne, which is a very, very busy station. I remember they used to claim that it was the busiest station in the UK. Lisburn, maybe not quite so busy, but then back into the city in Templemore Avenue, you'd have been back to your bit of a homecoming into the city and the busy times. Because, what I find is when you move out into the rural areas, you may not have as many calls, but they last longer.
They do.
In the city, you have more calls, but you're always 10 minutes away from a hospital, so that's good. And you, when you moved then, and you went on to your paramedic course, that was all part of what was laid out for you from the start? You had to do that, you had no choice?
Well, yeah, we were direct entry and then fast track. It was always sort of set out to us that we would be fast tracked into.
And many of the 20 in your first course made us through to the paramedic course or beyond it. Were there any low school dropouts? Like when you're down there, what do you think about it?
So that's a good question. I think there was a large proportion of it, proportion of us. Certainly everybody that joined with me in the Eastern Ambulance Service Trust went on to be a paramedic. Some left and went to other trusts or other services, but we all made it through to the paramedic course.
And paramedic training in those days was so much different from today, where it's university.
Yeah.
It was all in-house. How long was that course and how did you find it?
This is like a quiz, John.
Take a trip down memory lane.
I think it was 2 or 3 months. You did a month in the hospital at the end, and I think you did 2 months at the beaches. So it was really intense. I remember studying in the local library and thinking to myself, I hadn't worked this hard whenever I was at university. Maybe that's why I'm not a marine biologist now. But it certainly was very intense. There was an awful lot of information to try and get into your brain in a very short space of time. And then after that short space of time, you're out in the world as a paramedic.
And you're out in the world because now, as a paramedic, the buck stops with you on the ambulance. How did you find that? In fact, you maybe had to go back and prove yourself again, did you? Where did you become paramedic? What station?
Back in the Ardoyne.
Back in the Ardoyne, yeah. So you would have, at least, that would have been beneficial for you in that you would have been with some of the people who would have helped you through the early days of getting through things. So there's an understanding there. But how did you find that responsibility of becoming a paramedic?
So it did weigh quite heavily on me because with...
What age are you now, 21?
Yeah, 21. With relatively short service. A breadth of experience, but relatively short service, you were now ultimately responsible. And at times you would be working with the aisle hands, as they would have been called. But 6 months previous, they were keeping me right.
Yeah.
And now here I am, the paramedic with responsibility for the patient.
Yeah.
And it did.
But I keep saying this, and I said every paramedic gets such there was always the old saying that the paramedic was only ever as good as the EMT who worked with them.
I agree with that, John. I agree. being a paramedic who has relied on a good EMT, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Certainly, it sometimes made you think about everything happening around the call, because you're starting to think about different drugs, and then an EMT will just come in and do thing that needed done.
No, right.
Because sometimes you can overcomplicate things.
Yeah. I know this is a bit of a whirlwind tour through your time here, but you're a female within the Northern Ireland Ambulance Service, and in terms of the operations, there is nobody else above you that's female. Sure, isn't it? You are Director of Operations, who's male, and you have another 3 assistant directors who are also male.
With 4.
So we're going to end up there, but I'm still just making you aware this is a whirlwind tour through your time here, because I know that you have done so much, So you're paramedic. How long do you say paramedic for before your next step was RRD paramedic?
Yeah, there was a...
RV came in around about 2003, was it?
I'll believe you. I think so, because I remember being on the RRV, dispatched down to Carnlough at a time when the 7/7 bombings happened in 2005. And it was probably that incident that made me really start to think about emergency planning, and that was probably the spark, that incident, and how the ambulance services responded to that in London, and the partnering services really just drew an interest in me.
Yeah. So the RRV, that's a completely different role from being on double crewed ambulance, because now you are, on many occasions, out your own, the clues in the name, rapid response paramedic, Again, can you remember your first day stepping in there thinking you didn't have the EMT to keep you right, although you knew that somebody was on the way, but on many occasions you were going to be the first person on scene?
I think when it started, those many years ago, it was very, very different to what it then became. And backup was generally round the corner. We were arriving in time to start initial treatment, and then an ambulance was 5 or 10 minutes behind you. I think towards the end of what was my career in the RRV, which was maybe 2018, maybe just before that.
So you in RRV for approximately 12, 14, 15 years, really?
Yeah, I took a couple of sabbaticals. I was a station officer for a while. I was a halo for a while. I was a complaints officer for a while, a bit like Mr. Ben, of the ambulance service. But it was much more challenged towards those latter years when the backup wasn't necessarily coming.
Yeah. So you said that you became a station officer for a while. So that moves away from the front line. What was it about? How did that happen? Where did you become a station officer?
That was in Belfast. So I was a station officer in Belfast for about 18 months. And
was that a permanent post or
no? It was a temporary post.
Right.
I think.
And how did you find the move over to what was always termed in those days the dark side?
The white shirt.
The white shirt.
It was tough. It was tough again because.
But again,
I was young.
I come back to this again. You're female. You know, Fiona would have been there. Is there anybody else? As a female, as a station officer?
Ruth McNamara would have been about, and Margaret Barclay, obviously.
Was she a station officer or station supervisor?
She was a supervisor,
yeah. So how did you find being a female? Still reasonably young, I suppose, but your face belies your age.
Thanks.
But how did you find becoming a station officer?
At that time, at that point in my career, looking back, it wasn't for me. It moved me into a very different space. And really at that time, I was more interested in the clinical side, the patient focused. It was a lot of bureaucracy and management, funnily enough.
Yeah. Well, and the station officers, they did everything. They did everything. Modern stores and all sorts of stuff in stores, and looking after timesheets, etc.
Staff.
So it's a challenging job with very little thanks for it sometimes. You're only as good as your last game.
I can't remember the thanks now, funnily enough.
No, but you're only ever as good as your last game. You're doing it when everything goes smoothly.
That's it.
Everybody loves you, but wants you to make a decision about somebody's leave or somebody's teaming up with whatever crew or going to some course or something. It can become difficult.
Yeah.
But you get through that. How long did you do that for?
So I think about 18 months, and then back on to, I probably went to there from the double crewed ambulance, and then it was from there that I went on to the RRV.
Right. And although you say it wasn't really for you, later in your career, you moved back into area management.
I know. I know, John.
Okay. So what was it moved you to go back into area management? Well, I think, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm going to.
Tell me what to say, John.
I think that seeing that position of an area manager as a female and your experiences of how females are recognised in the service, did you in some way think, I can make a bit of a difference?
It's interesting you bring that up. I probably didn't go in there, if I'm to be totally honest, wholeheartedly with that being my raison d'etre. I did that for a year. Haven't been in emergency planning for a while, but I did it for a year. And on the last day, a member of staff took the opportunity to come to speak to me and said to me how disappointed she was in the fact that I didn't seem to be able to change some of the cultures or attitudes that she had experienced within the division.
And how did you feel about that personally, first of all?
I thought it was courageous of her to tell me, and when somebody tells you something like that, I mean that it hits you, a thud in your chest to actually realise that I had a responsibility there to make a difference, to make things better for people, and I didn't think that. Well, obviously, it wasn't perceived that I'd done enough.
Yeah, that's the word, the perception of it, because when somebody comes and puts you right between the eyes with that one, there's bound to be a temptation if you just sit and think, what did I do? And think to yourself, all these things that I did do, but they're not quite so visible to this person. Maybe they were visible to somebody else, because I know in the service that there are people who are helped tremendously by private conversations with their managers.
Exactly.
And it remains private and it remains personal. And that's the measure of the person who's given the help, I think, So was there a degree of that in your mind that you thought, I could have done better, but I did do?
Yeah, I mean, I did do, because obviously you're that small lifespan of your career almost flashes before your eyes, where you immediately look to yourself and think, did I do anything? And there were multiple conversations, as you say, John, where I was able to be compassionate and challenge where it was appropriate, but it just probably made me realise that there was a step or two left to take. There was more to be done.
But there's always more to be done. There's always progress rather than perfection, and you do your best with what you have. And that's the most that I feel people can expect of you. Sometimes it doesn't seem that way. Sometimes in that respect, people will look back and say, well, actually, I was maybe a little bit unfair with that criticism, So you mentioned emergency planning. You were there for how many years before you did the ASAM?
Before I did the ASAM, I had joined emergency planning after being a Halo. It took me 4 goes to get in. I was interviewed 4 times over a number of years before I finally broke the mould of emergency.
So this all started with you having an ice cream on Carnlough, looking out over the ocean, thinking about what was happening in London, and thinking I'm going to become an emergency planner. Fast forward
another 10 years, and I did my master's distance learning through the University of Leicester. Managed to do that on my days off, and got my master's, and then it took me another couple of years before I managed to get a job in emergency planning.
Okay, and how did you find that role?
Yeah, it was interesting. And back then, I think emergency planning was a very different space, a very different field than what EPRR is today. And part of my role was business continuity, just as we went into the COVID-19 pandemic.
So, those words, but a chill down my spine.
Mine too, in fairness. I didn't even know if I was going to say them out loud, but I had no other way to describe it.
All right. Then back ASAM, did you then move in? You moved back to emergency planning? Did you move straight back in there as the assistant director?
No. So convoluted about the place. I'd been in emergency planning. I then went out to area manager land. Did a brief stint in performance management, plan and performance team, and then secured the role as assistant director of EPRR.
How long have you been on that post?
2 years.
2 years. And how are you finding it? With great power comes great responsibility.
Spider-Man. That's one of my best quotes. I love that. Yeah, with great power comes great responsibility, but there is a fantastic team of people within the department, and I know that you'll have people that will say that, but I genuinely mean it. We have an absolutely amazing group of managers, and the team that comprise the hazardous area response team are a fantastic bunch of people.
Right, and you're happy where you are?
Is anybody ever happy?
Would you be happier? But what do you think you've brought to the job?
Hopefully I have brought all the things that I have valued in others as I've come up through the job and through my career. Hopefully I can show compassion to the people that I work with. I have a genuine desire to see things done properly, done right. People need to enjoy their job to be good at their job, I think.
As a young professional girl coming into the organisation, that would have been a highlight, getting into the service. But you strive towards it and you arrived at that door, so that's an achievement. But throughout your career, what would you say were the highlights?
I think there's multiple milestones. Becoming a paramedic for me was a real sense of achievement and what it means to the wider community as well. The fact that you say that you're a paramedic, I wouldn't say I'm a particularly good one now. Being on the RV, again, that was something new that was happening. It was something innovative, and I was proud of that. That wasn't easy. I think the tenacity and just persevering. We've had the opportunity recently to cover some brilliant events like the Open Golf, and a lot of the training that I have had the opportunity to access with a hazardous area response team is fantastic. Some of the days you're looking round, hanging off a cliff, thinking I'm actually at work here.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I do remember actually getting photographs of you down at the SSE coming down. You were doing.
That's right.
Was that emergency planning role? That was it.
That was the. I was in the RV at the time, and I think that was the launch of the.
But as I say, I have known you a long, long, long time, and I must express my concerns at your humility and asking your highlights, because not so long ago you received a national award. What was it?
So, yeah, thanks, John. I received the King's Ambulance Medal for services to the ambulance service. And
that's one medal is given out on an annual basis to a member of the Northern Ireland Ambulance Service, and there's lots of somebody somewhere took time to make that nomination on your behalf.
Yeah.
And then it's put through the Department of Health, and then it's put through to the Cabinet Office, and then you went along. And who actually presented you with your medal?
It was the King.
It was the King himself?
Yeah.
So it must have been was that his first year doing it? Because it wasn't that long ago.
No, it was 2024.
What was it?
Christmas of 2024.
Time flies when you get older.
I can't remember yesterday.
But that must have been a great day for you and your family and your partner.
It was an absolutely fantastic day. And they make you feel just so valuable and so welcome. But I said it at the time that I was awarded it, and I'll say it again now. You stand on the shoulders of giants. I got the award, but there's an awful lot of people that work cohesively to sort of put me in the position where I was nominated for it, and I am very humbled by it.
Well, you're very humbled by it, but you're very humble about it as well. And I think that's a good place to end. The conversation has gone through very quickly, and as usual, I maybe talked too much. It's lasted longer than it should have. But it's all fascinating. And if there is role models for females coming into the organisation, you're up there.
Yeah.
You've got to be up there because you have moved through, you've dealt with anything that's been thrown at you, and you've come out the other end, even with that little bit of, you're not sure whether you belong where you are, but you're still young enough, the career's not over yet, and just keep it going, get that EPRR team to improve even better, despite the fact they're doing great work. But thanks very much for coming in, Heather.
Thank you, John.
Okay, so there you go, Heather Sharpe, our Assistant Director of Operations, responsible for EPRR. I'm not even going to try and say it. So I hope you got a lot out of that. It did take us through down from the mid-90s right through to the current day, over 30 years of service. So I found it very interesting chatting with Heather, and I hope you found it very interesting listening to it. So until the next time, goodbye and take care.